Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Trump is associated with the free market, but he understands nothing about economics, and he's not really a free market guy. And he has all kinds of stupid economic ideas. He's got some good economic ideas. Cut regulations, wonderful, and he's doing it. Cut taxes, fantastic. I mean, this is very good. But look, if you go for a weak dollar, what you're really doing is destroying American savings. And you're making imported goods more expensive, which he also wants to do by putting barriers up and charging duties on. This is horrible. I mean, this could actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and we have a real depression, much worse and also much different than the 1930s.
Welcome to Rethinking the Dollar. Today I'm excited to have my guest, Mr. Doug Casey, international speculator as well as best-selling author. Today, Mr. Casey is joining us to share his thoughts on the global economy as well as share his thoughts on the future of our monetary system. Doug is the founder and chairman of the Casey Research, a provider of subscription-based analysis on his market technology. So, Doug Casey, welcome to Rethinking the Dollar.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's nice to be here, and for the first time, but I hope not for the last time.
My pleasure. Thank you for taking time for me. And so I'm a fan of your work, and also you have a new book coming out, so we'll get to that as well. But before we dive any further, I tend to start off rethinking the dollar with some questions based upon the dollar. So what comes to mind when Doug Casey hears the words rethinking the dollar?
Most people have a lot of misplaced faith in the dollar. There used to be an expression, I don't think it's ever used anymore, it was called "it's as sound as the dollar" when they were talking about something, but nobody uses that anymore. It's just like that old expression that we used to use when I was a kid, when somebody would say something that was jiving people, say, "Hey, it's a free country." Nobody says that anymore either. You ever notice?
No, all right.
So things have subtly changed in the U.S. and changed with the dollar, and unfortunately the dollar is going to reach its intrinsic value in the future. And the question is, well, what is its intrinsic value? And the problem with the dollar is it's the unsecured liability of the U.S. government, which is bankrupt. And in the years to come, that's going to become very obvious with catastrophic consequences for the average American.
Right, I do agree. Now, so why do you think, of course, why is it important now, like never before, probably in human history, to really, for people who have had no interest whatsoever in this subject matter, to really begin diving in and learning for themselves the importance of financial literacy as well as what I like to call monetary literacy?
Well, that can actually lead us to a broader question. What do people mostly learn about economics and finance? They learn a few things in school, but as Mark Twain said, it's not what people know that's a problem, it's what they think they know that just ain't so. And all of the economics that's taught in the schools, what little it is taught, is completely backward. Everything you hear on television is conventional, constipated, wrong, backward. So look, anybody that's listening to us right now that isn't familiar with what's known as the Austrian School of Economics and doesn't understand the value of gold and a little bit of basic economic theory, they're going to be in the jackpot in the next few years. They stand to lose everything they have and suffer a huge drop in their standard of living. Because I think we're at the leading edge of we're in the eye of the storm. Put it this way, in 2007, when that great financial crisis started, that was just the leading edge of a huge financial hurricane that hit in earnest in 2008 and 2009. But now we're in the eye of the storm, this huge hurricane, but we're going into the trailing edge of the storm, and it's going to be much worse and much different than what happened in the 1930s. Right. So hold on to your hat.
Right. Now you're painting a picture of a storm. Now I'm familiar with your work. I've seen your videos that you have on your website, International Man with Casey Research. So you do a great job of painting a very unfortunate, unpleasant picture. And so can you describe in a little bit of detail what that unpleasant feel of just losing everything that people thought they owned would feel like and look like? Because most
Yeah,
Americans we're,
well,
we're spoiled here. We don't know hard times for the most part. My generation, the millennials, centennials, we know is swipe your debit card, credit card, and spend whatever you want. But the rest of the world doesn't know that. So paint a picture for us for those that may not actually know.
yeah, earlier, Mike, you referenced the problems with the currency, and this is actually the most important thing that people can understand because when you work and produce, you're paid in dollars. And if you want to get ahead in life, you save those dollars. The problem is this. What happens after you save dollars, thousands, many, many thousands? What happens if those dollars lose value overnight? Everything you worked and planned for vanishes with the dollars. So, unfortunately, since the dollar is the unsecured liability of a bankrupt government, if you want to get ahead in the world, you can't save a depreciating asset. That's why these third world countries, basically around the equator in Asia, Africa, and South America, the average guy keeps falling further and further behind because all he can save is the local currency, and the local currency consistently turns into toilet paper. So he's always behind the eight ball. And the
Right.
same thing is going to happen in the U.S., I'm afraid, on a much grander scale. It's going to be much more serious
Right.
because even in all these countries, smart people save dollars. They don't save pesos or kwaches or ringgits, or they don't save these horrible currencies. They try to get a hold of the U.S. dollars because they're stable. So they're going to be devastated, and they're going to blame Americans for their currency losing value. So this has got all kinds of consequences.
Right. Now we are, you're an international guy, so you are everywhere, so you have your ears to the ground on a lot of things. Now, looking ahead now, what's some things that are of more concern to you, probably globally, that could be a trigger for this event that you're trying to describe here, and give us a little insight into that. What type of event?
Well,
What concerns you? What scares you right now in 2017, if anything?
well, look, of course, everybody's talking about Donald Trump, and he's a complex individual. I actually made money bets that he was going to win the election, uh, and that treated me well. Why did I feel that? And to answer your question, I'll start out with Trump because I know Trump is on everybody's mind. He's certainly on the news every night.
Right.
Uh, is Trump a good thing or a bad thing? They say, oh, he's a racist. Oh, he's a sexist. Oh, he's a homophobe. Oh, he hates Muslims. And frankly, we should analyze all of those things. I think they're basically all lies. What we've got going on in the U.S. now is a culture clash. These people that live in the so-called red counties that voted for Trump, which is the vast majority of the geographical area of the U.S., are aligned against the people that live in the blue counties, the Democrats. And I've never seen anything like this in my whole life. They don't just dislike each other and disagree on politics where you can have a conversation. They hate each other on a visceral gut level. They have totally different worldviews. It's a culture clash. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. There's never been anything like this since the war between the states. It shouldn't be called a civil war because it wasn't a civil war. A civil war is where two groups try to take over the same government. It was a war of secession where one group tried to part. I think we might have something like that again, frankly. And I don't think the U.S. should remain as one political entity. It should break up so that people that have one cultural view can join that group and the other join the other group.
Now,
Uh,
when you say break up, you mean like like separate, state type of breakup, or just our governments, or how do you well, how would you describe a breakup? What would that look like?
well, look, my ideal situation politically is that right now the world is divided into about 200 and some, 220 perhaps, different nation states, different countries. Uh, that's a very bad idea. Because almost all these nation states are trying to weld together people of different views, philosophies, languages, religions, ethnicities, races, and it doesn't work. This is why Africa, which I'm pretty familiar with, it just hasn't gone anywhere because every one of those countries there and every one of the countries in Central Asia, and this includes India too, uh, are they're not real countries. They were put together arbitrarily in the boardrooms of Europe in the 19th century. And they have no internal consistency. So different groups in those countries try to take over the government so they can use it to steal. Basically, my ideal solution is this. Instead of having 220 nation states in the world, we should have about 7 billion.
Yeah, that's different. That's
Everybody should be a sovereign individual. I don't believe in anybody having power over anybody else so they can, yeah, if you're in a family, your mother and your father have power over you until you leave the family. Why? Because they're paying the freight. But that's the end of the story as far as I'm concerned. I don't believe in democracy, quite frankly. That's just mob rule with a sports coat on.
yeah, good way of putting that. Now let's move on to the economy a little bit. We are now we have a 20,000 Dow and climbing. Give us your thought on the Dow. There's a lot of talk in the media, mainstream media, the recovery, everything is good here. It's a great time to get into the market. What are your thoughts? I mean, I know you probably feel a little bit different about that, but share with us your thoughts on that, and how high can it go, and then how low will it correct?
Yeah, well, anything's possible. I really believe that. So, could the Dow go to 40,000? Yeah, it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. Look, I wrote a book, Michael, back in 1982, at the bottom of the stock market, at the bottom of the bond market, when the Dow was under 1,000. And I said in that book, the Dow's going to 3,000. And everybody said, you're completely insane. That's a triple of the Dow. Well, it went to 3,000 and then it went to 20,000 over the next generation. All I can say about the stock market is this. Look, by any traditional parameters of value, price earnings ratio, price to book ratio, dividend yields, it's very overpriced. And the economy itself is head over heels in debt. And what does debt mean? It means that some people have borrowed money and they owe it to other people who are going to want it back. And when you borrow money, there's two things that are possible. One, you're taking capital that others have saved in the past and probably using it to consume now, not to create more wealth, or you're mortgaging your future, which can make you a serf when you pay it back. So my feeling is the economy can collapse, and with it, earnings on the stock market, and with it, prices of stocks. So I want no part of the stock market right now.
Right.
You want to
Understandable.
buy when things are cheap, and people don't have a sense of history, don't realize how cheap things can get. I mean, when will the Dow Jones, which I don't know what's it yield right now, under 2%. In the past, it's yield 6, 8, 10. At the bottom of the last depression, after dividends were cut significantly, it yielded 13% at the bottom. And a lot of world stock markets that I watch a lot of international stock markets. I mean, I remember in the mid 1980s, three stock markets in the world. They happen to have been Hong Kong, Belgium, and Spain. All three of them were yielding in current dividends on the big stocks. They were yielding 12 to 15% in current dividends. They were selling for 2 times earnings, and half of book value. Now that's when you buy stocks. You don't buy them at nosebleed levels where they are right now.
Yeah. Wow. Now, this is just to move on to some things that happened out east over the last couple months. The whole cashless society push and removing cash, and starting off with India, for example, which is a very big country. They removed the 1,000 and I think it's the 500 rupee note and replaced it with a 2,000 note. So they're going through a cash crisis there. What's the whole push on removing cash, and can you see that coming towards our neck of the woods here in America?
Yeah, I can. It's all the governments of the world, and this is happening not just in India, which is really basically a primitive country where half the people in that country are still living on $1 or $2 a day. As unbelievable as that sounds, but that is the case there. Um, but in advanced countries, in Europe, especially Sweden, Finland, even in Uruguay, where I'm going tonight, they're trying to get rid of cash. Why are they trying to do that? They say, well, drug dealers use cash, but criminals use cash. Yes, of course, and free men use cash because money equals freedom. Money equals all the things you want to have and provide for other people. And they say, well, that's okay. You can use our money in your bank account. But when it's in your bank account, and that's the only way that you can buy or sell, the government controls your bank account. If you become politically unpopular for whatever reason, they can shut off your bank account. What was that movie with, was it Will Smith and Gene Hackman, where they killed all his credit cards and he became a non-person? What am I talking about?
Nothing rings a bell right now. I'm sure I've seen it, but nothing rings a bell right now.
Yeah, well, the thing is without cash, basically you're under the control of your rulers.
Right.
And that is not something that is acceptable to a free man. I think, look, we shouldn't be using the dollar to start with. It used to be the dollar was just a name for a certain amount, 1/20th of an ounce of gold. And then people forgot that the dollar just represented something, and they used the dollar itself. It's just a floating abstraction. And if you get rid of cash, these pieces of paper, then you got to use banks. And when that happens, they are in total control of your life. It's an insane idea. It's a criminal idea. It's anti-human. But, the average person who's got a smartphone now, oh, it'll be convenient. I won't have to worry so much about somebody sticking me up for the dollars in my wallet. It's crazy.
All right. I was actually not long ago having a conversation with someone younger than myself, and his recommendation was, hey, just send it to me via the app. I'm like, why? He's like, because cash, I don't like carrying it. I don't like carrying it. It's easier to send it to me via the app. I'm thinking to myself, wow, you don't know that, this is all a part of the process to make it enjoyable and pleasurable and convenient for you to remove the idea of using paper from you. But yet, he was younger, so I'm sure doesn't understand that movement that's happening. But let's talk about a little bit of, how the whole idea of Bitcoin and digital currencies and things like that happened to come on the scene around the same time as we started going through our, current economic crisis, 0908, and how it's become a alternative means that people putting a lot of confidence and trust in. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm of two minds about Bitcoin. Aristotle, in the 4th century BC, gave the 5 characteristics of anything that can be used as a good, reliable money. It has to be durable, which is why we don't use wheat as money. It has to be divisible, which is why we don't use artwork as money. Can't divide the Mona Lisa into pieces. It's got to be convenient, which is why we don't use lead as money. It takes too much to be of value. It has to be consistent. That's why we don't use real estate as money, because every piece is different from every other. And last, it has to have value in and of itself, which is why we shouldn't use paper as money, because you're just left with a piece of worthless paper. You can't do anything with it. So the problem with Bitcoin is that its only value, as far as I can determine, is as a transfer mechanism. If you want to send money to somebody on the other side of the world right now, you've got to go through the SWIFT system in your banks. It's expensive, it's inconvenient, it's not private. But with Bitcoin, you can, assuming that the person on the other side of the world can find somebody that wants to accept Bitcoin, you can do it instantly and for no cost. So that's the value of Bitcoin. It's a transfer mechanism. But you know, if the dollar starts getting losing value at 15, 20, 25% per year, which is entirely possible over the next few years, people might go to these cryptocurrencies because the government can't control them. They're limited in amount, and there'll be more confidence in them. And right now, they're interesting speculative vehicles for capital gains. Not Bitcoin so much, but some of these new ones that have different characteristics. Right. They're like buying penny stocks. So interesting.
Right, definitely. Now, you kind of hinted at the dollar because you'd be losing a massive amounts of purchase power within a short period of time. Now, there's a whole idea of right now of a currency war going on, of everyone trying to, I guess, race themselves to the bottom, as I like to say. And so, how do you think, the idea that the Trump administration is talking about the dollar's too strong, and so I guess they're going to begin doing things to weaken it, which is not good for me as someone who's saving and investing and living off the current Federal Reserve note. So, paint a picture for a weaker dollar through this Trump administration in 2017.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Trump is associated with the free market, but he understands nothing about economics, and he's not really a free market guy. And he has all kinds of stupid economic ideas. He's got some good economic ideas. Cut regulations, wonderful, and he's doing it. Cut taxes, fantastic. I mean, this is very good. But look, if you go for a weak dollar, what you're really doing is destroying American savings, and you're making imported goods more expensive, which he also wants to do by putting barriers up and charging duties on. This is horrible. I mean, this could actually be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and we have a real depression, much worse and also much different than the 1930s. I see you've got in back here some gold coins, and I think that people should be buying gold, even at its present price. Hey, I started buying gold a long time ago when it was 35, well, not 35, it was $42 an ounce, which when Nixon devalued the dollar. But it's an excellent speculation, and it's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability, and it's private. So I think everybody listening to this should call a coin dealer and buy bullion coins and put them away.
Right. Good advice there. Now let's talk about a little bit about our monetary policy here at the Federal Reserve Bank. They recently made a little quarter-point hike, and so they, I guess, mentioned about how possible 3 more coming up this year. What do you think? How will the Fed and Trump get along? Will they be buddies, or will there be some problems? Will there be any rate hikes, or does it even matter at this point? Give us your thoughts.
Well, Mike, there's a whole class of talking heads that make a living out of predicting what the Fed's going to do. Let me say something. The Fed has no right to exist. It serves no useful purpose. It should be abolished. It's unnecessary. Worse than unnecessary, the Federal Reserve, is destructive. So I don't try to second guess what these idiots are going to do. But the last thing that they should be doing, nothing they do is good, is controlling interest rates. That's for the market to control. Setting the price of money is as stupid as trying to set the government to set the price of candy bars in a store. So they're equally ridiculous.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, as we draw towards the end of our conversation here, you have a new book. And so can you share with us what brought that book about? Can you hold it up for us? And
Thank,
yeah.
thank you, Mike. Authors love it when somebody asks them about their book.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing more about it myself because definitely will be reading it myself. So give us some insight into it, and why you write it, and what it's about, and go into it for us.
Okay. Well, you will like it. I promise you will like it because it came out in July, and it's already won the Leonard E. Read Award for the best libertarian novel of last year. And just as important, there's a guy named John Williams who founded Autodesk. He's a multi-billionaire, lives in Switzerland, and all he does is read books all day because that's what he wants to do. When you're wealthy, you can do what you want to do, and that's what he does. And he gave this novel, I don't know Mr. Williams, but he gave it his prize for best novel of 2016. What is this book about? It's about a young guy named Charles Knight. He's 23, and instead of going to college, which I explain why that's a stupid thing for most young people to do, I advise them, if you're in college, forget about it. You're going to bankrupt yourself. You're misallocating your time, your money.
Whoa, okay. Slow down 1 second here. You just said that going to college for some people are stupid. Like that right there is not something people want to hear. Now, I mean, give us. I mean, and I'm for it. I kind of am. I think our current educational system is failing our kids anyway. So before we get any further, dive into that just a little bit. Share a little bit of that thought, being that that's an interesting concept there. Explain why.
Well, I first brought that concept public. If you go onto YouTube and you look at and you dial up Doug Casey, Phil Donahue, who was the Oprah Winfrey of his day, back in 1982, which happened to be the day before the election that Reagan won. One of the things that I said that got boos from the audience was I said, even then, you shouldn't go to college. It's too expensive. You're going to have your mind filled with all kinds of ridiculous and backward and counterproductive socialistic ideas. So I've been saying this for a long time, and college is even more unaffordable now than it was back then. Look, education is something that you do for yourself. It makes no sense to sit in a classroom listening to a professor who may or may not be any good to start with, but may be having a bad day, and when you're sitting there, you may fall asleep, you may cut the class, your notes may not be good. It's not the way to learn, just listening to lectures. Education is something you can do for yourself, and with the internet, all the knowledge of the world is there for you. Easy to get. Best professors, best speakers in the world, interactive. Universities are a dead duck. The only reason to go to a university is to meet other people who are there. But the only universities where that makes any sense are places like Harvard and Yale and Stanford, where the top people that you want to meet, most people are just going to college because they don't know what to do after they get out of high school. And somebody told them that you need a college education. Nonsense. At our company, if most people go to college, okay, fine. So we don't question that. But if somebody's got an advanced degree, we ask them why. If you're an MBA, why didn't you start a business instead of spending $50,000 or $100,000 to get an MBA and have some professor who's never run a business himself give you all kinds of theory? This is crazy. So anyway, getting back to Charles Knight. Charles explains all this, why he did this. So he wants to turn this relatively small amount of money he has, not much, into a lot of money. He gets involved in the junior mining stock market, and it's a bull market. He gets lucky on this one stock, which has property in Africa. I'm a big fan of Africa, incidentally. I spent a lot of time in Africa. I think that's the land of the future. I think if anybody wants to travel, you should go to Africa. Reason why? Nobody goes to Africa. I mean, they'll go on a safari in South Africa or Kenya. That's not Africa. It's nice to see the animals. That's got nothing to do with the continent. You go to Africa and you will find that you have knowledge, skills, experiences, sources of capital, all kinds of things that the locals don't have. And as a speculator, which is the name of the book, Speculator, you want to be on an on-level playing field. You don't want a level playing field for you. You want to go where it's on-level playing field where you have an advantage, because life is tough enough without an advantage. Anyway, so Charles goes to Africa. He finds a gold mining frog. He gets involved in a bush war with a warlord and turns his small amount of money into 200 million, and then has the government taken it away. So it's a book on economics, on mining, on how to make money, on all kinds of different things in novel form. So I really urge all of our listeners and you to go on Amazon, and promise you'll enjoy it. But Charles, just to tell you a little bit more, it doesn't end with Speculator, because then he becomes a drug lord. And people say, drug lord? Hey, he's a good guy. How can he be a drug lord if he's a good guy? Well, the fact is, there are good drugs and bad drugs. And the fact that, I'm not a drug guy myself. I've done a lot of drugs, like most people in my generation have, but I think they're generally destructive of your physical well-being. I mean, moderation in all things. I'll try anything once, twice if I like it. Yeah. But people go overboard, it'll ruin their lives, okay? Anyway, we explained the drug business, how it works, the legal and illegal drug businesses and effects. And that's a hell of a novel. That's coming out in July. And then the government, once again, steals his money from him. He makes another couple $100 million, as in the first book. They steal his money from him again and put him in jail this time. Now he's kind of pissed off. So he becomes an assassin, because he's a good guy, moral guy, ethical guy. There are just some people that need killing. So we discuss the assassin's trade and how it's done, and how you don't, and the ethics and morality of killing people, which is very, touchy subject. And then he goes into more radical occupations in future novels, which will be released every coming July.
Wow.
But read this book, Speculator.
I will get it, definitely. No, that's a heck of a journey that guy Charles Knight is on. So as we draw towards the end, last question. The name of the show is Rethinking the Dollar. Give us your 2, 5, 10-year outlook, of course, opinion on the Federal Reserve note and how it will either be here domestically in the U.S. or as well as viewed as the current reserve currency of the globe. Give us your thoughts on what it will look like, and will we be using it or what? What do you think?
Well, the dollar is going to cease being the reserve currency sometime in the next decade. I'm confident of that, because the Chinese are making a lot of progress with the yuan. Of course, the euro, on the other hand, the Europeans, that's going to cease to exist. That's an Esperanto currency. And the European Union is going to break up, and there's all kinds of problems in Europe. Don't rely on the dollar. That's kind of the bottom line. And there are lots of reasons. We could talk for hours about why the people that are relying on the dollar today, whether their insurance policies, their savings, they buy bonds, their pensions, this is really, really big trouble, really serious on a personal level. So people have got to start understanding what's going on and doing something about it. Now, that's the bad news. But the good news is that during a time of financial chaos, most of the real wealth in the world is still going to exist. It's just going to change ownership. So you got to be one of the people that is on the winning side of that equation. I think the world at large, because the average guy, no matter who he is and how he's been programmed to think like a serf, we're all genetically programmed to try to produce more than we consume and save the difference. I mean, people understood this up until very recently, from when we became humans 200,000, anatomically modern humans about 200,000 years ago were programmed that way. So people will keep producing, and science and technology will keep advancing. So the world's going to get better. And Ray Kurzweil is right. about the singularity, that within 20 years, there are so many converging technologies, not just computers, but many other things that are going to change the nature of life. But in order to profit from these things, you want to be as rich as you can be so that you're not left behind as an individual. And so get out of the dollar and start traveling and take advantage of things around the world. Most people just act like potted plants and take what's given to them. I have a very bad approach to life, I find.
Right. Now, Doug Casey, I appreciate you sitting down with us. Give the audience, for those that may not be familiar with you, where can they find you at? How can they stay in tune with what you have going on, and also your newsletter? I'm a subscriber via email, so I get the updates via email. Give people a way to get in contact with you and stay tuned to what you have going on.
All right. Well, there's two blogs that we have that are daily and are excellent, actually. One is internationalman.com, and the other one is caseyresearch.com. And you can subscribe to both of those, and you'll find, I think, lots of valuable free information, and you can get in touch with me through either of those blogs. And also, if you read Speculator, you can send me an email at highgroundbooks.com.
highgroundbooks.com. Well, Doug, thank you. It's been a privilege to have you join us on Rethinking the Dollar. Looking forward to continue to follow your work. You do a great job of informing the people, as well as giving us a great perspective that most gentlemen are afraid to give. So I thank you once again, and enjoy your day and have fun down in Uruguay and a good sunny weather down there.
It is indeed, Mike. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you.